This portion of Lee Pitts Live is brought to you by Hodges University, educating the leaders of our community for over 20 years.
Welcome back, Southwest Florida, on the award-winning Lee Pitts Live. Of course, I'm your host, and we're glad that you've been with us here going into our 21st year on the air. And I got a chance to interview this wonderful author here some years ago. So without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome her here to the studio and talk about this book, which is going to be a bestseller. It's called The Flight of the Wood Nymph. Welcome to the show. Let's bump. Now, let's pronounce your name for me. Pronounce your whole name for me.
Analiese Douchay.
I didn't want to screw it up. That's kind of French, isn't it?
Yes.
Douchay.
Douchay.
Annalise Douchay.
Yes, sir.
When you sat down to write this book, what inspired you to write such a book? First, you had to think about what you wanted to put pen to pad. But what inspired you? What was that thing that said, I got to do this?
I had told my story slightly to some people, and they said that they thought it would be inspirational and I should write a book. So I kept writing, and I've been writing since I was 12.
Right.
So it seemed like maybe the natural progression would be to write something, but about this topic, it was because it was what I had lived, and because I see students who are experiencing what I went through, I thought they needed to know that someone they knew had experienced it so that they could turn their life around.
Excellent. And as I was reading the book, it seemed so educational, informative, directive, and also introspective, where you were pulling out some things that I hadn't thought about. When you talk about a subject, without telling everything about the book, when you say a subject that they were experiencing, talk about that subject.
It was about abuse.
Mm-hmm.
I came up in a violent household, extremely violent household. And at first it was a situation with my father and my mother, but then it became violence against the children. I guess she had no outlet for her frustration, and she took it out on us. And so we had to live through that, and that was kind of a horrifying experience. But a lot of my children in school are experiencing similar situations.
Right.
And I wanted them to know that not just people on TV have lives like this, real people that they know, so that they have an option to be able to make a change.
And to get some help too.
Yes.
Now, when Rick, let's put that book back up on the screen, that cover. We're looking at the cover of your book. Tell us about the design of the cover, how you came up with that, and what people are looking at.
One day I was sitting on a park bench looking really kind of down, and my husband shot the picture. Mm-hmm. And when I was thinking of the cover, it was somebody who was being released from a prison inside of themselves. And that picture symbolized it. And God put it in me to draw that picture. Excellent.
Now, the title, The Flight of the Wood Nymph. Tell us about that title.
I told my dad when I was a grown woman, I ran into him again as an adult, and I told him that I had felt totally disconnected from everything. And he said it was because I was a fairy creature, a wood nymph, and that was why I didn't feel connected. So when I thought about writing the book and the title, it seemed perfect. I was somebody who had been bound in this body that was finally being released and freed from the burden of abuse.
Mm-hmm. When you were writing the book and you were going into your inner self and telling all of your personal life, how did you feel revealing, because now I'm reading the book, I'm saying, wow, she's telling all of this. How did that feel? Was that therapeutic for you?
It was, but it was also frightening. It took me over 20 years to actually put it to paper. Mm-hmm. It was that frightening for me. There were times when I had to stop for almost years. I couldn't write anymore. There were times when it was so depressing that I couldn't write anymore and I'd stop. But it was freeing. It was the first time I was able to tell the truth about me. Mm-hmm. I had felt unreal all of my life. Mm-hmm. And for the first time, I became an entity that was real.
What was so interesting too is the fact that by the time you wrote this book, you were a successful educator. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, you were Teacher of the Year or something to that effect. Go ahead and brag on yourself.
Thank you. I've been a substitute teacher for 12 years, mm-hmm. and it is the greatest joy in my life. And I was the substitute teacher of the year for middle school last year.
That's excellent. And so you were able to bring in your writing, it's obvious that you're well educated and you're able to expound on that. Now, you said early on that you thought that children could take something from this, but in reading the book, it seems like everybody can take something from this book. Talk to that.
I wrote it because the children initially motivated me to do it. I was listening to stories from them that they would tell me they felt comfortable to talk to me. And I've always had that ability, thank God, that people felt safe coming to me. So when I listened to their stories, then I was able to say, if they can tell me what they're living through, I have to have the courage to do what I have to do. And kind of that was what got me to actually put it on paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then the substitute teacher thing, that was just the most amazing thing in the world. I just don't know how that happened. It was God, and I won it.
I think all teachers should read this book, and I think all people should read this book.
Thank you.
To broaden your market there. What do you hope to achieve by writing this book?
Actually, my initial accomplishment's been there. I'm free. I'm free of the pain that I lived with almost all my life, which is a long time, considerably long time. But I want it to be a New York Times bestseller, and I want a forum where I'd be able to speak to inspire.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure that's going to come. The idea of people reading this book and then going into action. What type of action would you, if a child was reading this book and say, hey, I need to call to action, what would you advise them to do?
The first thing you need to do is to get a sense of who you are, to understand that what happens around you is not necessarily who you are, to understand that you have the power in your heart and your mind to change your life and make it better. I used writing as a way to escape, and it saved me. I used my parents. People say, who are your role models now? My parents really were my greatest role models. They showed me the terrible side of life, and they showed me the best. And I was blessed to be able to see that. And some of our children don't get to see that there's an option. I want them to know that they're their option.
Finally, who inspires you and why do they inspire you so much?
Everybody inspires me.
You're always
blessed.
positive.
Yes, I am. And hopefully my son, who I do love with all my heart, will read this book and understand his mother. And maybe we'll have a better relationship.
Okay, Rick, let's put it up again. The name of the book is The Flight of the Wood Nymph. And it's certainly going to be a bestseller. And Analiese Douchay is the author. So go to that website that you see on the screen and find out more about the book. And we're so delighted to unveil it right here on Leap Is Live. So as the saying goes on this particular show, for those who say it can't be done, they're usually interrupted by those like this fine writer, Analiese Douchay, who are doing it. We'll be right back and we'll talk some law on Leap Is Live.